You know that terrifying cold sweat you get when your boss slacks you at 4:57 p.m. saying, "Hey, got a second?" Your stomach drops, you rehearse your apology for a mistake you haven't even made yet, and you realize you've traded your entire soul for a steady paycheck and a mediocre healthcare plan. We've been trained to believe that being a good, compliant little corporate soldier is the ultimate path to security. But the brutal reality is that why complying with your boss is secretly destroying your bank account is the biggest open secret in modern America. This isn't just about surviving your 9 to 5. It's a complete psychological rescue mission for your financial freedom. Today, we are breaking down how to stop treating your passion like a broke hobby and turn it into a high-leverage business model. We're going to completely rewrite your relationship with power by showing you how to bypass corporate gatekeepers and get into the inner circle of the world's most influential mentors. You're going to learn the raw, unacademic street psychology of marketing and sales that actually forces people to trust you and buy from you without ever feeling like a slimy, used car salesman. We'll map out the exact discipline of bootstrapping your growth using nothing but your own wit. And finally, we'll permanently burn your resume so you can build an uncopyable personal brand that forces companies to hunt you down, transitioning your entire consciousness from a passive employee to an unstoppable self-made creator. So let's get started. Chapter 1. How to make your work meaningful and your meaning work. Let's be entirely honest with each other before we even get into this. You probably bought into the great American lie, didn't you? The one where your high school guidance counselor, who looked like they hadn't slept since the late 90s, looked you dead in the eye and said, "Just get into a good college, choose a major you love, and the rest will take care of itself." So you did it. You signed a piece of paper transferring a small nation's GDP from your future self to a university endowment fund, spent 4 years eating ramen that tasted like cardboard, and walked across a stage to receive a piece of paper that currently serves as a very expensive coaster on your IKEA desk. Now you're sitting in a cubicle that smells faintly of old microwaved fish, staring at a spreadsheet, wondering how on earth your passion for 14th century European literature was supposed to pay for a studio apartment that costs $2,000 a month. Michael Ellsberg wrote a book called The Education of Millionaires, and he basically spends the first part of it screaming what we all secretly know into a megaphone. Nobody is coming to save you. Your degree is a legacy artifact from an economy that died before the iPhone was invented. And if you want your life to actually mean something while also keeping the lights on, you have to learn how to make your work meaningful and your meaning work. But here's where everyone messes up. We've been fed this absolute garbage narrative about finding your passion. Follow your passion, they say. It's on the coffee mugs. It's in the inspirational Instagram captions written by people who live in their parents' basements. So you decide your passion is, I don't know, underwater basket weaving or artisanal organic pet photography. You quit your soul-crushing job, you launch a website, you tell all your friends on Facebook to support your journey. And 3 months later, you're eating sleep for dinner because nobody actually wants to buy a $30 photo of a hamster wearing a monocle. The tension we all live in every single day is right there. How do you do something that doesn't make you want to jump out of a moving vehicle every Monday morning while also making sure your credit card doesn't get declined at Taco Bell? Ellsberg's whole point in this first chapter isn't that you should abandon your dreams and become a corporate drone who spreadsheet shuffles until retirement. It's actually the opposite, but it comes with a brutal reality check. Meaning, and money aren't toxic exes who can never be in the same room together. They are supposed to be married. But you can't just offer the world your meaning and expect them to hand over their wallets out of the goodness of their hearts. The world does not care about your inner child or your creative journey. The world cares about its own problems. The real secret to making your meaning work is finding the exact intersection where your unique obsessions collide with a problem that someone else is losing sleep over. Think about it like this. Imagine you're at a party, and some guy walks up to you and just starts talking about himself for 45 minutes straight. His childhood, his favorite brands of artisanal cheese, his deep thoughts on the cinematic universe of Shrek. You're looking for the nearest exit, right? You're faking a text message just to escape. That guy is the amateur entrepreneur who tries to sell their passion without looking at the market. Now imagine a different guy walks up to you, looks at the massive coffee stain on your shirt, laughs, and hands you a Tide pen while telling a quick story about how he used to ruin every shirt he owned until he figured out a trick to prevent it. And suddenly, you're listening. Why? Because he looked at you, saw a frustration you were actively experiencing, and solved it in a way that felt human. Most people treat their career like a slot machine. They pull the lever of formal education, they wait for the symbols to align, and when 3 lemons pop up, they blame the machine. But the millionaires who skipped college or dropped out and built empires didn't look at the machine at all. They looked at the people standing around the machine. They realized that the only way to fund a life of purpose is to become insanely good at a real-world skill that bridges the gap between what they love and what the market desperately needs. If you love writing, don't just write poetry that only your mom reads. Learn how to write copy that makes a stranger click a buy button at 3 in the morning because your words made them feel like you finally understood their pain. That's how you take the thing that gives your life meaning and wrap it in a business model that actually works. We've created this bizarre cultural divide where you're either a starving artist who retains their purity but can't afford dental care, or you're a corporate sellout who has a 401k but cries in the bathroom stalls at 2 p.m. Ellsberg looks at that choice and says, "Why choose either when both options are completely miserable?" The magic happens when you realize that capitalism isn't the enemy of your creativity. It's the ultimate validation of it. When someone hands you hard-earned cash for something you created, they aren't just giving you money. They are saying, "What you did lowered my anxiety, solved my problem, or made my day better, and I value that more than the numbers in my bank account." So if you're sitting there right now, staring at a checking account that looks like a temperature reading in Antarctica, dragging yourself to a job that drains your battery before you even finish your first cup of lukewarm office coffee, you have to stop waiting for a promotion or a certificate to validate you. You have to start looking at your skills as raw materials. Stop asking, "What do I love to do?" Start asking, "What do I love to do that can fix a broken piece of someone else's universe?" Because until you figure out that translation mechanism, your passion is just an expensive hobby, and your day job will continue to feel like a slow, white-collar execution. You have to learn the actual mechanics of human connection, persuasion, and value creation. And that brings us to the ultimate question that underpins this entire shift. Once you realize that the traditional system has abandoned you and you finally decide to take ownership of your own practical education, who exactly are you going to learn from when the professors in ivory towers don't have a clue how the real world works anymore? Chapter 2. How to find great mentors and teachers, connect with powerful and influential people, and build a world-class network. Let's talk about networking. I know. The word itself probably makes you want to swallow a handful of dried drywall screws. It conjures up images of awkward hotel conference rooms, lukewarm shrimp cocktails, and guys named Chad wearing slightly too tight suits, aggressively shoving glossy business cards into your hands while pitching you a multi-level marketing scheme for essential oils. We've been told that networking is this mechanical game of collecting LinkedIn connections like they're Pokemon cards, hoping that if you hit 5,000 connections, a wild CEO will suddenly appear and hand you a 6-figure salary out of sheer admiration for your profile picture. But let's be real. If your strategy for getting a mentor is cold messaging a billionaire on Instagram with a message like, "Hey bro, can I buy you a coffee and pick your brain for an hour?" you deserve to stay blocked. Think about it from their perspective. You're asking a person whose time is worth thousands of dollars a minute to sit down at a Starbucks so you can extract free business consulting from them in exchange for a $4 macchiato that tastes like burnt sugar. That's not networking. That's a digital stick-up. Michael Ellsberg completely flips the script on this in the second chapter because the self-made millionaires he studied didn't climb the ladder by being annoying pests. They did it by understanding a fundamental truth about human psychology. Powerful people are lonely at the top, surrounded by people who constantly want to take something from them. If you want to connect with the masters of the universe, you have to stop acting like a beggar and start acting like a value creator, even when you have absolutely nothing to your name but a negative bank balance and a decent work ethic. The secret to building a world-class network isn't about who you know. It's about how you serve the people who know things you don't. Think about the last time you had a group project in college or a terrible task at work. There's always that one person who just quietly steps up, anticipates the problems, fixes the broken printer, buys the good donuts, and gets the job done without complaining or demanding a gold star. You love that person, right? You'd hire them in a heartbeat because they make your life easier. High-level mentors are desperate for that exact type of person. They don't want to be picked for their brains. They want someone who can take the chaos out of their day. If you find someone whose life or business you admire, your first goal shouldn't be to ask for advice. Your first goal should be to do a deep dive into their world. Read their articles, watch their interviews, look at their business, and find a glaring, bleeding wound that you have the specific skills to patch up. If you're a video editor, don't ask them for a job. Find a terrible clip they posted on social media, edit it into a masterpiece that looks like a Hollywood trailer, send it to them and say, "Hey, I noticed your audio was a bit off on this, so I fixed it for you for free. Hope it helps." No strings attached, no asking for a phone call. That is how you break through the noise. You don't ask for permission to add value. You just deliver it so beautifully that they feel psychologically uncomfortable ignoring you. We live in a culture that is utterly obsessed with credentials and gatekeepers. We think we need a Dean's List letter or a fancy title to speak to the people at the top of the mountain. But the truth is, the system is a facade. The people who actually run the world don't care about wisdom. While your peers are still highlight reading a textbook written in 2012 by a professor who hasn't run a real business since the fall of the Soviet Union. But you have to check your ego at the door. You have to be willing to be the apprentice, to do the unglamorous work, to be the person who handles the logistics so the genius can focus on the art. And you have to do it with absolute sincerity. People who have made it to the top have a highly sophisticated, built-in radar for phoniness. They can smell a hidden agenda from a mile away. If you're just sucking up to them so you can pitch your crappy startup 3 weeks later, they will spot it, and you'll find yourself back in the digital wilderness before you can even finish your pitch. This isn't about manipulation, it's about mutual evolution. The best mentors don't just want a fan, they want a legacy. They want to see their ideas alive and kicking in a younger, hungrier version of themselves. When you show up with real energy, flawless execution, and a genuine desire to learn and assist, you're not taking their time. You're giving them a chance to pass the torch. And once that connection is forged, your entire financial trajectory changes. You go from a nobody trying to bang down closed doors to someone who gets introduced to the inner circle with a casual, "Hey, this kid is a rock star, you need to work with them." That single introduction is worth more than a master's degree from Harvard, and it didn't cost you a single dime of student debt. So stop looking at influential people as characters in a movie or unreachable gods on a pedestal. They are just humans who figured out a specific game before you did, and most of them are secretly terrified that they'll wake up one day and realize they have no one qualified to carry on their work. The door is wide open, but you have to stop knocking like a salesman and start walking in like a builder. Because once you possess the ability to look a powerful person in the eye and offer them genuine help instead of an invoice, you've mastered the ultimate cheat code of modern society. But getting into the room is only half the battle. Once you're in there and you've got their attention, how do you actually convince the rest of the world to care about what you're doing? How do you take that raw value and turn it into something that people will fight each other to buy? That requires an entirely different set of unlearned skills, the kind they never teach you in an auditorium, but the kind that decides exactly how many zeros end up in your bank account. Chapter 3. What every successful person needs to know about marketing and how to teach yourself. Let's play a quick game of mental honesty. Imagine you build the absolute greatest, most revolutionary widget in human history. It solves climate change, cures lower back pain from sitting in office chairs, and tastes exactly like stuffed crust pizza, but has 0 calories. You put it in a cardboard box, sit in your garage, and wait. What happens next? Absolutely nothing. You sit there until the spiders weave webs around your ankles, and you die broke next to your world-changing invention. Why? Because the world didn't know it existed, and even if they did, they didn't care. We have this romantic, deeply naive idea that if you build a better mousetrap, the world will beat a path to your door. That is a lie invented by people who have never had to pay rent with an actual business. The reality of capitalism is brutal. A mediocre product with world-class marketing will destroy a world-class product with mediocre marketing every single day of the week. If you went to business school and took a class on marketing, you probably spent a semester memorizing the 4 Ps: product, price, place, promotion, and studying how a massive corporation like Coca-Cola spends $50 million on a Super Bowl commercial that features a CGI polar bear holding a soda. That's nice. It's very artistic. It also has absolutely 0 relevance to your life when your marketing budget is exactly $42 and whatever is left on a Starbucks gift card. Michael Ellsberg blows up the academic definition of marketing and replaces it with the only definition that matters for your survival. Marketing is the art and science of getting people to notice you, trust you, and look at your solution as the definitive answer to their specific pain. And the best part? The skills required to do this cannot be taught by a professor who hasn't sold anything more complicated than a syllabus. True marketing is applied empathy mixed with a little bit of street-smart psychology. It requires you to step completely out of your own head, out of your ego, your desires, your need to look smart, and climb directly into the messy, anxious, overwhelmed mind of your customer. Right now, as you listen to this, there are millions of people scrolling through their phones at 2 a.m. They aren't looking for a corporate mission statement. They aren't looking for your credential list. They are lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about their failing relationship, their mountain of debt, their stubborn belly fat, or their total lack of career direction. If your marketing sounds like a stiff, professional press release full of corporate jargon, their brain will instantly filter you out like white noise. To teach yourself marketing, you have to become a student of human attention. You have to look at your own behavior. Why did you click on that specific YouTube video? Why did you open that specific email? Why did you buy that mattress online instead of going to a store? It's never because of the technical specifications. It's because the creator or the writer spoke directly to a hidden feeling you thought nobody else understood. They used your vocabulary. They roasted the exact same things you hate. They made you feel like they were standing right next to you, looking at the problem together. The self-made millionaires Ellsberg interviewed didn't learn this by reading case studies from the 1980s. They learned it by experimenting in the wild. They wrote headlines, they sent emails, they created offers, and they watched the data. When people ignored them, they didn't complain that the algorithm was broken. They realized their hook was boring. When people clicked but didn't buy, they realized they hadn't built enough trust. This is called direct response marketing, and it is the ultimate equalizer for a broke person with big dreams. It means you don't need $1 million agency. You just need a laptop, an internet connection, and the willingness to look stupid until you figure out what makes people click. Think about how most people try to market themselves on a resume or a LinkedIn profile. It's always the same soul-crushing boilerplate. Highly motivated self-starter with a proven track record of cross-functional collaboration and a passion for synergy. It makes you sound like a defective robot that was programmed by an HR department. Now imagine instead you write, I look at your company's sales data, find the leaky bucket where you are losing customers, and fix it so you stop wasting money on ads. Boom. Instantly, you aren't a commodity anymore. You are a relief valve for their stress. That is marketing. It's taking the invisible value you possess and translating it into a language that someone else's bank account understands. You have to realize that nobody cares about your backstory until you've solved their immediate problem. Stop trying to tell the world how great you are. Show them you understand their reality better than anyone else does. If you can describe a person's problem better than they can describe it themselves, they will automatically assume you have the solution. It's a psychological reflex. Once you master that translation mechanism, you never have to beg for work or visibility again. You become the lighthouse instead of the ship tossing around in the dark, desperate for someone to notice you. But once your marketing works and you've successfully captured their attention, you hit the scariest wall in the entire entrepreneurial landscape. They are looking at you. They are listening. They are standing at the counter with their wallet in their hand, but they are still hesitating. There is a final barrier of human doubt, fear, and inertia keeping them from making the leap. This is where marketing ends and the most feared, misunderstood, and essential skill in human history begins. If you can't close that gap, all the attention in the world won't pay your phone bill. So how do you cross that final finish line without feeling like a slimy, manipulative greaseball? Chapter 4. What every successful person needs to know about sales and how to teach yourself. Let's be completely honest. The word sales makes you want to take a boiling hot shower with a box of steel wool, doesn't it? The moment you hear it, your brain instantly conjures up an image of a guy named Danny standing on a used car lot in a faded polyester suit, flashing a smile that's a little too bright, aggressively trying to convince you that a 2004 Honda Civic with a leaking transmission and mismatching doors is actually a luxury sports vehicle. We've been conditioned to think that selling is a form of social warfare, a dirty game of psychological manipulation, verbal jujitsu, and tricking people into parting with their hard-earned money for things they don't even need. So when it's time to sell ourselves, our services, or our ideas, we freeze up, we stutter, we lower our prices until we're practically working for exposure, and we act like we're committing a minor white-collar crime just by asking to be paid for our value. But Michael Ellsberg pulls the curtain back in Chapter 4 to reveal a beautiful, liberating truth that the academic elites will never tell you. Real sales is not about coercion. It is the ultimate act of human service. If you genuinely have a solution that can fix a bleeding wound in someone else's life or business, and you don't do everything in your power to convince them to buy it, you aren't being polite. You are being selfish. You are letting them stay stuck in their pain just to protect your own fragile ego from the fear of rejection. The self-made millionaires who dropped out of the traditional system didn't succeed because they were loud, charismatic con artists. They succeeded because they taught themselves how to sit across from another human being, look past the corporate armor, and guide them through the terrifying emotional minefield of making a decision. Think about the last time you tried to buy something important, like a laptop, a car, or even a gym membership. You walked in there with a heavy shield of skepticism raised high, didn't you? You were waiting for the pitch, waiting to be played. That's because every human being has a highly calibrated built-in defense mechanism designed to protect their bank account from predators. If you show up to a sales conversation smelling like desperation, if you're thinking about your rent, your student loans, or your own financial pressure, the client's radar will pick it up instantly, and they will run for the hills. To teach yourself sales, you have to completely detach from your own outcome and lock your entire focus onto theirs. You have to stop pitching and start diagnosing. Imagine walking into a doctor's office with a stabbing pain in your stomach. The doctor doesn't immediately open a PowerPoint presentation, show you slides of their medical diploma, and scream, "Hey! Today only, I've got a special 20% off discount on gallbladder removals. If you sign right now, I'll throw in a free stethoscope." If they did that, you'd sprint out of the clinic clutching your stomach. Instead, what do? They sit down, they look at you, they ask deep, probing questions, they lean in, and they listen. They find out exactly where it hurts, how long it's been hurting, and what you've tried that failed. Only after they have completely mapped out your pain do they write a prescription. And when they hand you that piece of paper, you don't argue with them. You don't ask for a discount. You say thank you and you hand over your credit card because they didn't sell you. They diagnosed you. That is the exact mindset shift required to master sales in the real world. You are not a beggar asking for a handout. You are a high-level consultant with a medical kit looking for a specific disease that you know how to cure. When you sit down with a potential client or an employer, your goal shouldn't be to convince them how great you are. Your goal should be to ask questions that uncover their deepest, darkest operational nightmares. What is keeping them awake at 3 a.m.? Where are they losing money? Why did their last project fail? If you can guide them to articulate their own problem clearly, the sale is already 90% done. You don't need a fancy script or closing tricks. You just point to the wound and say, I see exactly why this is broken. Here's how we fix it. Do you want to do this together? Teaching yourself this skill doesn't happen by reading textbooks on theory. It happens through the brutal, beautiful baptism of real-world rejection. It means getting on the phone, sending the proposals, and hearing the word no until it stops feeling like a personal insult and starts feeling like a necessary piece of data. Every no you get is just a signpost telling you where your message became muddy, where you lost trust, or where you failed to communicate the true cost of their inaction. Because that's the secret weapon of sales. People don't buy things because they understand the value of the solution. They buy because they finally realize the devastating financial and emotional cost of staying exactly where they are. Once you realize that sales is just a structured, empathetic conversation aimed at solving a real-world problem, the fear completely evaporates. You stop viewing the transaction as a zero-sum game where you win and they lose. You see it for what it truly is, a mutual exchange of value that leaves both parties better off than they started. But once you master this, once your marketing is pulling people in and your sales skills are closing the deals, something terrifying happens. Money actually starts flowing into your life. Real, tangible capital. And that brings you face to face with a brand new crisis that ruins 99% of amateur entrepreneurs. You have cash in hand, but you have no corporate safety net, no HR department to manage your benefits, and no boss to tell you what to do with it. How do you manage that influx of resources without blowing it all on a lifestyle upgrade that keeps you trapped on a different kind of hamster wheel? Chapter 5. How to invest for success. The art of bootstrapping. Let's talk about that beautiful, terrifying moment when your hustle actually starts working. You've put in the hours, you've survived the rejections, your marketing and sales are finally humming, and suddenly you have actual real-world cash sitting in your bank account. It's an intoxicating feeling, isn't it? Your brain instantly enters emergency luxury mode. You start thinking, you know what? I've suffered enough. I deserve that sleek, matte black espresso machine. I deserve to lease that entry-level European sports car so the people from my high school can see me at a stoplight and realize I'm a big deal now. We live in a culture that is utterly obsessed with funding illusions. We see startup founders on the cover of tech magazines, smiling next to neon signs, holding giant checks for $5 million from venture capitalists who look like they belong in a sci-fi villain's lair. We think that to build a real business, we need to rent a glass-walled office in downtown Manhattan, buy 12 ergonomic chairs that cost $1,000 apiece, and hire a chief synergy officer before we've even made a single dollar in profit. Michael Ellsberg steps into Chapter 5 with a cold bucket of reality to wake you up from this corporate daydream. The self-made millionaires who built their fortunes outside the traditional system didn't do it by begging wealthy investors for permission to exist. They didn't do it by drowning themselves in debt before they even had a working prototype. They did it through the raw, unglamorous, street-smart art of bootstrapping. Bootstrapping is the ultimate financial discipline. It is the practice of building a business using nothing but your own sweat equity, your resourcefulness, and the actual revenue generated by your customers. It means you don't spend money you don't have on things you don't need to impress people you don't like. It's about being lean, mean, and criminally efficient with every single dollar that flows across your desk. Think about how the average person treats their personal finances. The moment they get a small raise at their day job, their lifestyle instantly expands to swallow that raise whole. They buy a bigger apartment, they sign up for a premium gym membership they'll never use, they start ordering the expensive sushi on Tuesday nights. They call this investing in themselves. It's not. It's financial suicide disguised as self-care. The amateur entrepreneur does the exact same thing with their business. The moment they land a big client, they immediately upgrade their software subscriptions, redesign their logo for $3,000, and hire an assistant to manage their calendar when they only have 3 appointments a week. They are burning their seed corn before the crop has even had a chance to break through the soil. When you bootstrap, your primary investor isn't some billionaire in Silicon Valley, it's your customer. If your idea is actually good, and if your marketing and sales are actually sharp, your customers will fund your growth. Every dollar they hand you shouldn't be viewed as profit to be spent on a celebratory weekend in Vegas. It should be viewed as raw ammunition. It should be reinvested directly into the assets that can accelerate your value creation. If you're a freelance designer, you don't buy a luxury watch. You buy a faster computer that slashes your rendering time in half, allowing you to double your output without working extra hours. You invest in tools, you invest in your own practical skill acquisition, and you build a cash fortress that protects you from the unpredictable storms of the market. There is a profound, almost spiritual freedom that comes with running a bootstrapped operation. When you don't owe money to a bank, and you don't have venture capitalists breathing down your neck demanding 30% growth quarter over quarter, you retain total ownership of your vision, your time, and your soul. You answer to no one but the person looking back at you in the mirror and the market itself. You learn how to solve problems with creativity instead of cash. When an amateur runs into a brick wall, they throw money at it. They buy an ad campaign, they hire a consultant. When a bootstrapper hits a wall, they lean on their wit. They pick up the phone, they rewrite the copy, they find a strategic partner, they pivot. They build a muscle of pure adaptability that a trust fund entrepreneur with a $20 million war chest could never dream of developing. This is the phase where you must learn to live like a ghost in your own success. You let your business look small while your bank account grows dangerously large. You let your friends think you're still broke and struggling while you quietly amass the kind of capital that buys real, unshakable sovereignty. You develop a deep, quiet contempt for flashy, superficial status symbols because you understand the true math of wealth. Every dollar you waste on looking rich is a dollar that could have been used to buy your permanent freedom from the machine. But as you master this art, as you build your fortress, refine your operations, and accumulate resources, you realize that your business cannot just be a collection of products or a set of clever systems. In the modern, hyper-connected digital landscape, people don't just buy what you sell, they buy who you are. They look through the corporate logo, past the sleek website layout, and they look for the human heartbeat behind the enterprise. If you are still hiding behind a stale corporate mask, trying to pretend you're a massive, faceless conglomerate, the world will treat you like a generic commodity. To scale your impact and maximize your leverage, you have to step into the light and build the ultimate asset, the one that can never be copied, stolen, or replaced by an algorithm. But how do you put yourself out there without feeling like an obnoxious, self-absorbed narcissist screaming for attention on the internet? Chapter 6. Build the brand of you, or to hell with resumes. Let's talk about the absolute psychological horror show known as the modern job application process. You know exactly how it goes. You sit at your kitchen table at midnight, your eyes bloodshot from staring at a glowing blue screen, modifying your resume for the 17th time. You're trying to use just the right buzzwords to bypass some faceless, robotic applicant tracking system algorithm that will probably reject you anyway because you didn't format your bullet points correctly. You upload your PDF to a company portal, and then, in a masterclass of corporate sadism, The website immediately forces you to manually type every single piece of information from that exact PDF into a series of tiny, clunky boxes. You hit submit, you wait 3 weeks, and you receive an automated email from a no reply address telling you that while your background is impressive, they've decided to move forward with other candidates who have 25 years of experience in a software that was invented 2 years ago. It is an undignified, soul-crushing game designed to strip away your humanity and turn you into an interchangeable cog in a corporate machine. Michael Ellsberg takes one look at this entire circus in Chapter 6 and essentially says, "To hell with resumes." A resume is nothing more than a historical record of your obedience to a system that no longer functions. It is a piece of paper where you beg a gatekeeper to look at your past and guess if you might be useful in their future. But the self-made millionaires who dropped out and conquered the real world didn't get their opportunities by waiting in line with a folder full of credentials. They bypassed the gatekeepers entirely by doing something radical. They built the brand of themselves. They realized that in a world drowning in noise and carbon copy professionals, your personal brand is your ultimate insurance policy, your ultimate leverage, and your permanent escape hatch from the resume black hole. Now, let's clear something up right away because I can already hear you cringing through the screen. When I say personal brand, I am not talking about becoming one of those insufferable, self-absorbed LinkedIn influencers who posts a selfie with a long, fictional story about what a homeless person taught them about B2B sales dynamics. I am not talking about dancing on TikTok or curated aesthetic lifestyle photos on Instagram. True personal branding has absolutely nothing to do with vanity. It is simply the public digital manifestation of your real-world competence. It is about building a visible track record of your thinking, your skills, your projects, and your values, so that when people have a specific problem, your name is the very first thing that pops into their heads. Think about it like this. If you need emergency surgery, you don't ask to see the doctor's resume to check if they were in the chess club in college. You want to know their reputation, you want to see their track record. You look for the person who writes the articles, speaks at the conferences, and has a line of people waiting outside their door. They don't apply for jobs. Jobs chase them. When you build the brand of you, you are shifting your positioning from a line item expense on an HR spreadsheet to a highly visible market authority. You start publishing your insights, sharing your case studies, and breaking down exactly how you solve complex problems in public. You turn your internet presence from an entertainment consumption device into a living, breathing asset that works for you while you sleep. Imagine two different copywriters trying to get a contract with a high-paying brand. The first one sends a cold email with a standard resume attached, talking about their BA in English and their deep commitment to excellence. The second copywriter doesn't send a resume at all. Instead, they send a link to a breakdown they published online where they tore apart a famous company's failing ad campaign, explained exactly why it lost money, rewrote the entire thing, and showed how their new version would increase conversions by 40%. Who gets the call? It's not even a competition. The second person has already demonstrated their value before a single dollar has changed hands. They didn't tell the market they were good, they proved it in broad daylight. When you possess a powerful personal brand, the entire dynamic of the economy reverses. You stop hunting, and you start getting hunted. Opportunities, partnerships, and high-paying clients don't require you to fill out applications because your reputation has already entered the room before you do. You become completely immune to layoffs, corporate restructuring, and toxic bosses because your economic value is no longer tied to a single company's permission slip. Your value is anchored directly to your reputation in the open market. It is the ultimate form of career self-defense. But stepping into this reality requires you to kill the old, comforting illusion of safety that you've been clinging to your entire life. It forces you to stop hiding behind the logo of an employer and take absolute, terrifying responsibility for your own name and your own output. It means realizing that you can no longer afford to operate with the passive, obedient mindset of a corporate servant who waits to be told what to do. You have to undergo a complete and total psychological renovation, because the future does not belong to the people who are really good at following instructions. It belongs to the people who can look at a blank canvas of chaos and build their own structure. And that brings us to the final, most critical psychological chasm you must cross: the deep, fundamental warfare between the mind of a permanent employee and the mind of a true creator. Which one is currently running your life? Chapter 7. The entrepreneurial mindset versus the employee mindset, and why the future belongs to entrepreneurs. Let's look at a word that has been completely hollowed out by corporate boardrooms and tech brochures over the last decade: initiative. If you look at any standard employee handbook, they love to talk about it. They tell you they want self-starters, they want innovative thinkers, they want people who take ownership. So you take them at their word. You look at a broken, inefficient process in your department, you spend your weekend mapping out a brilliant solution, and you present it to your manager on Monday morning. What actually happens? Best case scenario, your idea gets sucked into a black hole of endless committee meetings where it is watered down until it's unrecognizable, and you are told to stick to your lane because you don't have the proper clearance to make structural changes. Worst case scenario, you're viewed as a threat to the middle management bureaucracy, and you're subtly penalized for stepping out of line. The psychological conditioning of the modern workplace is a masterpiece of subtle sabotage. It trains you to sit on your hands, wait for instructions, ask for permission to think, and prioritize compliance over results. It breeds a specific, quiet paralysis where your primary goal every single day isn't to create massive value. It's simply to avoid making a mistake that could get you fired. Michael Ellsberg structures this final massive divide not as a choice between starting a company or working a job, but as a total civil war within your own consciousness. The employee mindset is an ancient software program designed for a world that no longer exists. It is built on the core assumption that your economic survival is someone else's responsibility. You hand over your time, your autonomy, and your creative energy, and in exchange, the corporation promises to provide you with stability, a predictable paycheck, and a clear path up the ladder. It's a beautifully comforting illusion. But the moment the economy shifts or a new piece of software renders your department obsolete, that illusion vanishes in a 5-minute HR Zoom call that terminates your access to the company's servers before you can even process what happened. The entrepreneurial mindset, on the other hand, begins with a terrifying but liberating realization. You are an independent contractor of your own life, running a business with a single employee, yourself. Even if you work a traditional 9-to-5, the moment you adopt this perspective, you stop looking at your salary as an entitlement and start looking at it as your first client's retainer fee. You stop asking, "What are my duties?" And you start asking, "What are the bleeding operational wounds in this organization that I can uniquely heal?" This shift changes the very chemistry of how you move through the world. An employee looks at a massive problem or a chaotic situation and says, "That's not my department, someone should really fix that." An entrepreneur looks at that exact same chaos, feels a spike of adrenaline, and says, "There is a massive fortune hidden beneath that mess, and I am going to build the system that extracts it." It is the transition from a passive consumer of reality to an active architect of it. The traditional education system spent 16 years training you to be an excellent employee. It taught you to raise your hand before you speak, to wait for someone else to grade your performance, and to follow a pre-written curriculum. But in the volatile, real-world economy, there is no curriculum. There is no syllabus. There is nobody standing at the front of the room telling you what chapters to read for the upcoming crisis. You have to become comfortable with the anxiety of the unknown, learning to make high-stakes decisions with imperfect information while your peers are still waiting for a memo from the executive suite. When you step back and look at the entire landscape we've walked through today, you can see how every single piece of this puzzle belongs to that one psychological breakthrough. Think back to the very beginning, when we talked about the great American lie of formal education, that expensive gold-rimmed trap that left you sitting in a gray cubicle holding a mountain of student debt and a degree that couldn't pay for a basic studio apartment. Why did that trap work so perfectly on so many of us? Because it was designed for the employee mindset. It promised a safe, predictable transaction. Comply now, get rewarded later. We were never taught how to take our raw human obsessions and translate them into a language that the market actually values. We were taught to be starving artists or corporate drones, ignoring the fact that our deepest meaning and our money are supposed to be married. And because we were stuck in that passive loop, we treated human relationships like a sterile game of collecting business cards, cold messaging people on social media with digital stick-ups, begging to pick their brains for the price of a cheap cup of coffee. It's only when you break free from that employee conditioning that you realize powerful people are surrounded by a sea of beggars. They are desperate for value creators. They don't want to be extracted from. They want people who can quietly step into their world, look at their bleeding wounds, and build the tools to patch them up before they even ask for an invoice. That is how you get into the room where the real decisions are made. Once you're inside that room, you see that the entire economy is just a giant machine driven by human attention and emotional recognition. You realize that a world-class product with mediocre marketing will die in obscurity, while a mediocre product with street-smart marketing thrives. You learn to stop talking like an HR robot using empty corporate jargon, and you start speaking directly to the late-night 2 a.m. anxieties of your customers. You learn that sales isn't a slimy game played by guys in faded polyester suits trying to manipulate people into buying used cars. It's a form of high-level medical diagnosis. It's looking a human being in the eye, understanding their pain better than they understand it themselves, and guiding them through the fear of making a decision. And when that cash finally starts flowing and your hustle becomes a real entity, you don't use it to fund an illusion of luxury to impress people from your high school at a red light. You don't buy the matte black espresso machine or run to venture capitalists begging for capital so you can rent a glass-walled office in Manhattan. You bootstrap. You treat every single dollar as raw ammunition to build a cash fortress that buys your permanent sovereignty from the machine. You become a ghost in your own success, letting your operation look small while your bank account grows dangerously large because you know that a personal brand, the visible digital track record of your competence, is a far more powerful insurance policy than any resume you could ever submit to an automated company portal. It all comes down to a single quiet realization that shifts the ground beneath your feet. The system didn't break. It was designed this way. It was designed to keep you small, compliant, and dependent on a safety net that was dismantled before you were even born. The moment you stop waiting for a gatekeeper to validate you, a boss to promote you, or an institution to give you a certificate of capability, you become dangerous. You become free. You realize that the entire world around you was built by people who were no smarter than you, and that the only difference between you and them is that they decided to stop asking for permission to build. Take a look at your own financial life right now. Look at the balance in your account. Look at how you spend your Mondays. Look at the projects you've been putting off because you're waiting for the perfect time or the right credential. Which software is currently running your choices? Are you still waiting for someone to hand you a syllabus for your own life? Or are you ready to pick up the tools and build the structure yourself? I'd love to know where you are on this path. If you've spent years feeling trapped in that traditional resume loop, or if you've already started taking those first unglamorous, terrifying steps into bootstrapping your own value, drop a comment below. Let's talk about it. This channel is a conversation, and hearing your stories, your frustrations, and your wins is the whole reason we do this. If this chat brought a little bit of clarity to your world today, or at least made you laugh at the absurdity of the traps we've all fallen into, leave a like on the video and subscribe to Wealth Mind. It helps ensure that these conversations keep reaching the people who need them most. Take care of yourself. Stop checking your ego at doors that don't deserve you, and go build something real.